Okay, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Newcastle City Council. The date is April 2nd, and we are going to have a 1-hour study session. The time is 6 o'clock. I am Mayor Clark. Please show that, let the record show all council members are present. And this special study session will be a discussion of a variety of topics, basically planning things for the future. The staff needs feedback from us as a council. So we're going to go over several line items, and the city manager is going to lead us off in that discussion. Go ahead, city manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, council. So the first item on the list is just the strategic plan check-in. So the strategic plan was included in the packet just so you could see it. We tried to color coordinate it so that it wasn't boring. Really, it's an opportunity for the most part for the council to take a look. And when we put this together a year ago, we talked about putting it in front of the council twice a year, just so that you have the opportunity to take a look at priorities and the things that are in the strategic plan, and make adjustments as you might deem necessary. And maybe just for Steve or for Councilmember Tallman and for Councilmember Bufford's benefit, just the approach with the strategic plan is for it to kind of be a living document, not to be static. And so as priority ones are accomplished, they come off the list, and we move priorities up as we go along. So, you know, ideally we would be accomplishing priority ones each year. Those items would come off. Priority twos would move up to priority ones. We fully expect that items will be added that aren't there, that may, you know, just because an item's not on there right now doesn't mean when we add it, it has to be a priority 3 or priority 2. We understand that that will ebb and flow and as things go, but the approach with the strategic plan is so that it can be, the bones stay the same as far as goal A, goal B, goal C, but as we move along, we get things accomplished and they come off, and we add more things, and it continues to live and move forward. And with that, I would, if the council has any comments or questions or discussion, I would leave it to you for that.
Okay. As far as the strategic plan, is there anybody who would like to make additions, subtractions, comments on any of these items tonight? Anybody? Councilmember Charbonneau.
Thank you. There was a number 4 item talking about coming up.
Oh, yeah.
There was a number 4 or category 4. I don't know the right nomenclature there. Sorry. There's a 4 item talking about developing a legislative agenda. I'm kind of curious when, like, just if you can kind of elaborate on that, city manager. Whereas I feel like it's kind of an ever-changing landscape that we'd probably visit year to year. Was there something different you meant by that?
So the reason we made it a priority 4 is priority 4 were things that we do on an ongoing basis. And so things that we do every year all the time, they're routine, but they're important enough that we want to make sure they're a part of the strategic plan. Those were priority 4s. And so the reason that, so it was a priority 4 because we're always going to put together legislative priorities.
Sorry, I'm misreading it. I apologize.
Okay, anybody else on the strategic plan? If not, I have, go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
So just on the biennial budget, priority 1 means top priority, or?
Priority 1 means that we would do it this year.
Yeah, I would, I would recommend moving it to priority 4 because I don't think so. We want to explore that for now. The biennial budget. I think, the yearly budget is a good way to go. What do you think? Yeah.
I said, what do you think of biennial budget or annual budget? Got your microphone.
I prefer an annual budget really myself because we're having enough trouble trying to keep track of it a year at a time rather than trying to figure out what we're going to be doing in 2 years.
So just the history on that, and it is also a city manager work plan item. It was to explore the possibility of a biennial budget. in 2024. We have not moved forward with that, but the plan was to do so.
Yeah, I know we did that and I was not in favor of that even, when we discussed it. So I think keeping it annual is what I think even, as a finance committee and, we would recommend keeping it that. So I wouldn't want to spend any time on researching biennial budget. Let's focus on other things.
So perhaps the finance committee could put this on your agenda for your next meeting, right? And come back after you have a solid discussion about it, council member? Yeah.
Yeah, being on the finance committee in the past, I thought the plan was to hear from our new finance director what that means, and because my understanding is it could potentially save time and money for the city. So I would hope that the finance committee would be able to look into that and see if it's a good option for the future.
Go ahead.
So just on that subject, if there's compelling reasons why we should examine a biannual budget, I'd like to see that. But I just in practice, it feels like an annual budget is where we want to go, but it would be great to see what the benefits would be. We should consider it. I would like to consider it.
Go ahead.
Okay, so regarding, let me bring this back alive here.
So the biennial budget, city manager will be on the next finance committee discussion.
Yep.
The goal C, maintaining a safe community, there are two priority 1 items on there. Are those relatively new or have they been on there for a while?
Well, so the strategic plan itself is a year old.
Okay,
I can't remember if those have been priority 1s since then. Or
Yes, they have.
we add them. I believe they have.
so we moved them to priority 1?
No, they started out that way.
Okay, and you were saying that priority 1s will be completed this fiscal year, this calendar year, fiscal year?
Right, that's the plan.
Okay. I'm good.
Okay, any other questions? Go ahead, Councilmember Charbonneau.
Thank you. City Manager Pingle, I know you talked about the desire to have more sort of projects in the 3 bucket of 3 to 5 years. I was curious if there's anything you came across since the sort of threshold of us creating this plan that you think might fit in that budget or you think would be worthwhile having a conversation about.
I'm sure there are. Right off the top of my head, I don't have any 3 ideas for you.
For myself, just speaking here on goal E, Echo, I think we can take off, implement the pandemic relief plan, right? That's done, unless somebody objects, we're finished with that. So that would be, I don't have a recommendation to replace that with a priority 1 right now, but I just think that should be, to clean up our list, it should be off of there. And then under goal F, natural resources, I think coming up in our discussion about the parks, we might want to change that after the discussion, right? There's 2 items on there, the cemetery fence and the Lake Bourne Park master plan. That could change based upon our upcoming discussion here in a moment on parks. So we might want to come back to that in a moment. But as far as that, if there's no other questions about the strategic plan, then we're going to ask the city manager, let's move on to the second item.
Thank you, Mayor. The next item was just we wanted to bring up the downtown strategic plan to the council. It's a priority 4, so an ongoing item in the strategic plan as far as implementing the downtown strategic plan. But it also was a city manager work plan item for this year as far as identifying potential next steps. And so kind of in discussions with Director Fitzgibbons and myself, we do think that there are opportunities in the downtown strategic plan as far as maybe some minor adjustments or at least adjustments that may not be overly complex to implement. and we would be able to walk the council through a public process as far as those, exploring those options. We just wanted to make sure we brought the discussion to the council that with comp plan ongoing and with the things that we have currently on the plate, maybe that's better for a 2025 item rather than 2024. But before we take that off the plate for the current year, we would want to make sure that the council is on board with that.
Comments on that? Anybody? Steve?
So outside of the discussion that we're having with the planning commission, if you guys are having other discussions about your thoughts about some opportunities we might have, can we be brought in the loop on those?
Yeah, so we have not, you know, it was more of a, me asking Erin about the downtown strategic plan and, you know, her thoughts on its status, how it sits, how it presents to developers and the opportunities there. And we more just kind of had a discussion about where we might be able to go. And we'd love to explore those. We just don't have the capacity right now to jump right in and with a new process and options and stuff with what we have ongoing currently.
Well, if there's key items that we can help with or that we should consider that you're thinking about, then it would be great to know, because we have been pretty active with the planning commission, and it would be maybe we could help drive some of those things forward if they make sense.
So we fully expect that to happen. We just want to tackle it once we get through comp plan, just because we don't have capacity to do both. While they'll have to jive, we just aren't going to have the capacity to jump into some of those changes while we're trying to get through comp plan.
Okay, any other comments on that? So I think you have the right plan, city manager, 2025 after the comp plan, right? It's not really something, they're too busy right now, right? And I would encourage, please ask everybody to speak more directly into the microphones, please, if you can. The next thing, city manager, go ahead. What's our next item?
So I'm going to turn a little bit of time over to Director Bronze to talk through the Sound Transit BRT issue.
Thank you, City Manager Pinkel. Thanks. Basically, what's in the packet memo summarizes the situation. The Sound Transit's BRT on I-405. The adopted 405 corridor master plan specifies service at 1 to 2 mile intervals along the corridor, yet the introductory service does not have any stops along the corridor until the 44th Street exit, so there's no stops between there and downtown Bellevue. Despite the fact that there's the Newport Hills Park and Ride and also the project under construction, the HOV widening project is going to construct HOV direct access ramps at that interchange. So the desire is to advocate to the Sound Transit Board to provide service to that stop, or at least when they're doing their initial build out to not preclude adding that stop at a future date, like for when they put in the backbone for the infrastructure, communications, things like that. So that in a nutshell is the issue.
So it sounds like what you would desire from us would be a council letter or some kind of a memo or direction request of the Sound Transit Board, correct?
Correct. Some advocacy. I will have to say honestly, there hasn't been a huge amount of momentum on the staff side, but the momentum or discussions have been pretty much fallen on silent ears. And just the response was that, well, they're already short budgeted as it is, so there's not any opportunity for further asks. But that doesn't mean we can't put our desire out on the paper.
City manager, what does that look like? Do you need us to just sign off on a letter, or what would you like to do? How would you approach that?
Yeah, I think there can be a couple of things. Councilmember Charbonneau, after we put this out, had reached out, and so with Regional Transit Committee, already involved Director Bronze in some discussions there. That's a great avenue, and we can continue down that avenue. But that's a King County committee that's helpful. But what we wanted was we want the council in their elected capacity to put pressure on the Sound Transit Board. And so, yeah, I would say we could start with a letter and go from there.
Okay?
And just to add to that, I think with Councilmember Charbonneau, I think that's an introduction to a new group and connections that hasn't been explored before. So I think that's a good thing to start with, and maybe through those discussions, see what they might recommend as being the most efficient next steps.
Rather than a letter to start
Or
with?
at least since there's a meeting on the 17th, so I think that'd be good during that discussion, either confirm with them or see what recommendations they might have prior to a letter, since that's pretty short in the time horizon.
Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's a yes and. I connected him with SCA staff, Sound City Association staff, and they spoke to Sound Transit on our behalf, and then that led to some more conversation. And then Director Bronze will come with me, I believe it's April 17th, for the next meeting, and we can sort of brainstorm there. I think a letter helps too, though. I think it's all of the above sort of deal. So I think a letter, I think it'd be great to, if the city manager can draft one, to sign on to that. And then I think, I forget who our representatives also are to Eastside Transit. They could bring it up there, I would say. And I think just trying all avenues.
Okay, thank you. Good, great suggestions. Councilmember Tallman, you could bring that up at your next meeting as well, right? So I think what I'm hearing then is we'll go ahead with a letter, and we'll let Director Bronze, Councilmember Charbonneau meet on the 17th, and then Councilmember Tallman can meet when he meets with his East Side group, right? So we'll do it three-pronged attack, so, okay? Okay. Any other questions on that, anybody? Okay, go ahead, City Manager, what's next?
Thank you for that. So we wanted to talk about arch contributions. Just they were a topic of discussion a year ago, where the council had decided to move to not make a contribution. There's been a little bit of a change as far as arches requests or requirements for a contribution, just from the standpoint of we're not getting invoiced. There's not a formula for housing trust fund contributions. There is that's separate from the membership dues, which is for the administrative budget and work plan. So that stays separate. In 2019, the legislature passed House Bill 1406, and so most of the time these funds are referred to as 1406 funds. But essentially it's an affordable housing sales tax. The way that they implemented it was the cities had the option of implementing the tax, which the city of Newcastle did, but it wouldn't be passed on to the consumer. It would be taxed, it would be credited against the 6.5% of the state's portion. And so the sales tax rate didn't go up. In order to implement it, it gets credited against the state sales tax. So we've had it for a couple of years now, and it brings in, $12,000, $13,000 each year. And those funds have to be used for affordable housing projects. And so the primary way that we accomplish that is through ARCH. And so I wanted to just make sure that everyone is kind of on the same page with, we receive sales tax specific to affordable housing. And so we should at least be contributing that much to the Housing Trust Fund for ARCH. And so I want to make sure we kind of have that moving forward. We have been contributing, $27,000, $29,000 each year. Last year we had budgeted, so for 2023 we had budgeted $31,000 and we did zero. This year we have $33,000 budgeted, and we kind of haven't really had that conversation at this point until, that's what I'm bringing up right now, is that conversation as far as we budgeted an amount, but what are we actually going to contribute? When we put that budget together, it was more based on the old way that that ARCH would expect or require a contribution to the Housing Trust Fund. And so we just want to make sure as we put together, so ARCH is saying, hey, member cities, what are you contributing? They're not saying, hey, are you contributing a specific amount? We just need to let them know what we are contributing, and so I want to make sure the council is able to provide that direction. But also, just as a matter of moving forward, and making sure everybody understands we have to contribute something, we should at least contribute the amount that we bring in.
Questions, comments, anybody? All right, seeing none, I would suggest or recommend that, like you said, we contribute the taxed amount or the amount we take in, contribute it directly back to Arch. Any objections, anybody? No? Okay, clear enough? Okay, was there any other questions on that, anybody?
I just want clarification.
Sure.
So then that 13,000 that we're getting back in the taxes, is that our full contribution? Or that's our full contribution?
Right.
Right, so that it would be separate from our membership dues. Our membership dues are for administrative expenses and they remain separate because we are not allowed to use 1406 funds for administrative expenses.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, city manager, next discussion item.
Hey, we wanted to talk about parks a little bit. So the first portion is just maybe two-pronged. Mostly just wanted to make sure we put in front of the council kind of the Lake Bourne Park Master Plan, the history of it, how we got it. And then the next project that we have identified as the next big parks project has been the amphitheater and plaza project. With a new council, we just want to reaffirm that direction. We had kind of planned it out, at least in the CIP, as a 2024 design, 2025 build. But also knowing that we've done these parks projects as resources allow. We had applied for a King County Parks grant for the amphitheater and plaza, and we were not successful in getting that grant this year. I'll invite Director Bruns to add anything that or correct me where I'm wrong. And so we just wanted to make sure that's the path we're headed down. And especially in light of recent discussions about the 95th park, or the sports facility on 95th for that park, and we've had interest from the community. We've had various discussions on that park and what we need to do there, and that'll kind of be the next portion that Director Bruns will help us kind of review the history of it. And so we also have the CAC going after third spaces, and we want to make sure we're heading down this path, and that the council has the opportunity to redirect us if they so choose. If we want to move forward with the amphitheater and plaza project, we just also want to just kind of reset the expectations as far as what the process might look like. We have some detail in the Lake Bourne Park Master Plan as far as what the amphitheater and plaza would entail and what would be included, but there's significant pre-design work to do before we even know what we're designing and going after and trying to build. And so we want to make sure that that's understood by the council, that those are probably discussions that should include the public rather than just being council staff discussions for a facility like what is contemplated in the Lake Bourne Park Master Plan.
Why don't we just complete the discussion by discussing the 95th before we discuss it as a council? Let's have both presentations.
Yeah, I'd invite Director Bruns if he has anything to add, that would be helpful.
Sure. Thank you, City Manager Pinkel. You covered it quite well. We did apply for the King County Parks levy in 2023. I believe it's 2023. That's the grant that we received successfully for the Crosstown Trail project that's just completing construction now. They have upped the grant level. When we applied before, it was a $500,000 limit. Now it's $1 million limit. And there's a handful of other grants that we could potentially seek, but we would wait till we're further along in that project. We'd be seeking construction funds. So at a point where we're further along the design process, that'd be more of a potential better opportunity to seek grant funding once you've kind of started down that path. Yes, and we're just at a planning level. Basically, the master plan identified the need, the location, and kind of like the magnitude of the effort. And then the next step would be go into design to finalize the look and placement of that. And then, yeah, definitely a public outreach process would be an integral part of that effort. And then,
Do you want to hit on 95th?
sure. So 95th is that all that predates my time at the city. I was not able to find a original comp plan. Trying to see where the genesis of that that sports facility came. I think it was just if I were to venture a guess, it was just a lack of a resource such as that, and there's no shortage of need for that for youth sports and recreation, and just taking advantage of the site there. The city did utilize grant funding to purchase that site on 95th, a fact that I wasn't aware of until 2019. So that is and that doesn't necessarily mean that the grant funding, as long as they'd be satisfied as long as it is used for recreational opportunities. So we could make it a dog park or a hiking park, something like that, as long as it's open to public use. So we're not tied to actually doing this full build out in order to satisfy any grant needs. But there is 3 phases that were proposed in the master plan that was adopted quite many years ago. Those are included in our parks impact fees. So I'm not sure if we were to not go forward with that project, we would, number one, have to adjust the park impact fees to compensate for that. And then any park fees collected could be still spent on other projects that are built into the impact fee calculation, but that's just one factor. There was some momentum right before COVID to kind of grassroots effort, some conversations at the chamber meetings to try to start the conversation around getting that project momentum again. And that was probably part of the reason why in the 2020 Capital Facilities Appendix, it was increased to a medium priority project from prior being a low priority project. And that conversation pretty much, with a lot of other things, when the pandemic hit, that conversation kind of went away. So, but I think there is, again, a need out there if the project if there's a desire to keep moving with that, and then even to advance it at another point, there would be community stakeholders that we want to engage. This is something that would be, I think, larger than the city to undertale and get some key stakeholders in the recreation or youth sports, and that, from the city, from Renton, just from the surrounding community to help be key stakeholders to guide that project moving forward.
Go ahead, Councilmember Charbonneau. Oh, Councilmember Sherlock, go ahead first. Doesn't matter.
Thanks. I just had a question. Can you elaborate a little bit about what you mean by the park impact fees? Is that it's in our budget, or what do you mean by that?
No. So, sorry. As soon as I mentioned that, I said, so we collect transportation impact fees and park and trail impact fees. Park and trail is one. They're called park and trail. So that's with every new single family or multifamily development. That is a charge that is placed at building permit. And so in order to calculate that, and this is all part of the Growth Management Act, that essentially the philosophy is that growth pays for growth. So the impact fees cannot pay for existing deficiencies, but they're there to pay for the public infrastructure necessary to support the new growth, either transportation or parks and recreation. So there was an update to those fees done in 2020, and you basically look at the forecasted growth and then what the needs are for that forecasted growth. From transportation, it's a level of service. We looked at intersection level of service. And then for parks and trails, you basically look at what was in the comp plan, the park and trail amenities needed or desired to support the growth. And then you have a project list, estimated projects divided by the number of households coming in online in that planning horizon, and that equates a dollar amount. And I should know the dollar amount, and I didn't put it in the memo. I think for parks it's about 7,000, 5,000, and I think for transportation it's about 7 or 8. Yeah, which is about average for the region. Sammamish is leading. Their impact fees are, I think, over 20 for transportation, and so basically that's just a cost of doing business. But the reason I brought that up is if you take a project off the list, at some point you then have to go back and amend the impact fee calculation, which would then bring the cost, take the fee down.
And just to clarify that number, the 5,000-ish and the 7,000-ish, that's per unit that's put in?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Go ahead, Councilmember Charbonneau.
Thank you. So what I would candidly like to see is I would like to see hopefully a consensus among council to give direction for staff to have 95th be the 95th Park be something to work on. And I think there's several reasons for that. I think one, legally it's required to be something, right? So I think knowing that that is required of us, I think it behooves us to be proactive in how we approach this. Two, I think right now the 95th property is, I think there's a lot of value we can get out of taking a space that is currently, as it says in our packet, mostly vacant, as opposed to currently the number one triage would be the Lakeborn, amphitheater project, which would be a much larger cost than this, and also a much longer design process than this. I think you get a lot of value too out of creating something where there's nothing, as opposed to an augmentation to something that already is existing. Currently, what I think has been really cool, it's been going at least from a value for us perspective, right, is Puget Sound Energy has been using that part as a staging area and paying us about $2,000 a month for that. Okay. And they're going to continue to do that, and they've made improvements to the space while doing that, sort of widening the gate so more cars could get in, building in a water service, helping us with the de-icer, and a lot of different implements. And I've seen really kind of directly too, I think you see it with the Skyhawks sort of programs that go on. I saw it personally coaching youth sports where they exploded in popularity right after COVID. Folks are very eager to, having had that time away, to get outside again and do that. It's right next to an elementary school park, an elementary school. And I think it would be a good revenue source for the city. I think it would be a new kind of feature of the community. Knowing we need to have a long-term sort of goal and direction for staff regardless, I would really be interested in us working on this project as opposed to a potential amphitheater project or community center. I'd be interested, candidly, in us having this be the sort of more of the priority, knowing we need to do something, knowing we can make something where there currently is something, and knowing it could bring, I think, a lot more revenue to our community and also more space for people to congregate. So I'd love to hear how other folks think.
Other thoughts?
Yeah,
Councilmember Tallman, go
so,
ahead.
My question is on the feasibility side of it and then the funding side of it. What's going to drive, so I noticed that the 95th isn't on our strategic plan, that the park for the 95th isn't on the plan, but it sounds like we have some grant opportunities. So are the grants going to drive activity for development in this area? And what's the timing on that? Are we at the risk of losing something, or do we have an opportunity to slow down a little bit and get more grants so that we can attack one or the other or both?
So we're at no risk of losing any grants for that effort. There's no timeline associated with that. The RCO, the State Recreation and Conservation Office, is strongly wanting us to open that park up for public use, and what we've committed to in 2024, so we acknowledge that 2023, basically the Energize East side, excuse me, because there's active construction along part of that property, was just there's informal trails out there and just basically making that more public knowledge, potentially putting a sign out there, and they seem to think that was adequate first step, just basically publicizing that that's an available public space. So that'd be a first step, and that would probably buy us many years from that point. And grant funding, we've not even thought about really grant funding opportunities. I think a first step would be, what's the long range phasing, financial feasibility, planning level, that kind of thing. I don't know that that was part of the master plan, and even if it was, that was 15 years ago, so it would require an update most likely.
So I like the idea of involving the community in exposing these plans, feasibility, cost benefit analysis, so that they can get an idea of you know, what our options are, and maybe get a lot of input from the community.
Right. Oh, and the reason it's not on the strategic plan is that because this is beyond 4 years, so the strategic plan is typically things 4 years or less. It is not, the 95th plan, when we did our last 6-year park CIP update last June, or last July rather, we added an item for the 95th park. That's the first time something had been identified, and that was pretty much in direct response to the RCO basically directing us, I say directing, that's maybe too strong a word, but basically their preference to see something happen out there, and it was a kind of loosely scoped item to start to look at some future opportunities out there, but it was actually not necessarily directly related to a sports park, but looking at some other potential interim improvements, off-leash area, natural wetland type of thing, not directly related to the sports facility.
Go ahead, Councilmember Sherlock.
Thank you. Are you wanting us to pick one or the other, or are we, what's the goal with this conversation?
So primarily with amphitheater and plaza, we just wanted to, there's been a lot of discussion about other things. So it's kind of twofold. We wanted to either have the council reaffirm, yes, move forward with amphitheater and plaza, or direct us to pause. But also make sure we were setting realistic expectations as to the process that will be required for amphitheater and plaza, where when we discussed it as a part of the CIP last year, it was more of a design 1 year, construct the next, and as we've talked about it further since then, it's probably not that simple. And so if we're moving forward with the amphitheater and plaza, we just want the council to reaffirm that with the expectation that we're likely not constructed by the end of '25. If not, we would like that direction as well. So I don't know that we're asking for an either or. We wanted the council to have the discussion and provide staff feedback.
If I could just add to that, just first a side note, I looked up the impact fees. The current impact fees for transportation are $10,179, and for parks and trails are $7,327, and that's for a single family home, slightly less for a multifamily. Just to add what city manager said is, I think two-pronged is to affirm our direction for the amphitheater next step, and definitely it's not a 1-2 punch design construction. For a couple reasons. One, I think there's going to be more of a outreach, and that design process is going to evolve over time, and then there'll be a pause to seek construction funding. And then I could see in a project like that, the design is not super timely, so you could get it designed and then wait until ample funding was available or you had grant funding, because the grants, it just depends on your competition when it comes down to it. And then, so that's one question, and then the 95th I see as a separate question. I don't see them competing against each other, because where they are in the timeline, the 95th is a multi-year far out. Even if we said, let's build it, let's open that thing as fast as possible, you're talking 5, 6, 7 years from now. So it's more of a, do we want to kind of still hang on the same direction as that being something out in the future or something else?
Deputy Mayor?
So, Jeff, like when we do feasibility, like say, for example, 95th, if you're doing feasibility cost benefit analysis, what is the approximate cost to the city, and is that covered by grants?
I don't know what the cost would be. I've not done that for a recreational type of facility, but something like that, we've got a master plan that dictates the size and scope and has a construction cost estimate. So I think it would just be affirming. I think you could probably do it for not that much. Let's say I'd throw a 20,000. Somebody that's influential or knows the industry of parks and recreation, and it could just be gathering some regional experts, subject matter experts that are chairmen of recreational leagues, and potentially seeing what that is, and then taking the capacity, the site inventory, the cost estimates, and what the going rate is, and what the potential take rate would be. Usually when you have a sports field like that, pretty much anywhere in the region, they are in use anytime the lights are on. So I don't think it'd be a matter of usability. It's just a matter of what's the break-even period, or what's your cost to operate versus the cost of construction, and then what's the going rate? Because you can be a point where I say that fields are always busy when the lights are on, but it depends on the rate. Because if you charge an astronomical rate that's above market, then you're not going to be able to. You'll have limited appeal. There's a second part of the question. Oh, grants. I don't know that there'd be much competitiveness for grants for something like that at that very high level planning. And then also too, if it's a smaller cost like that, it's going to be more difficult to get a grant for a competitive. Usually it's more construction focused or actual design, but something small like that might be something that would be have a good appetite for legislative delegation, especially in an off legislative year, because it could just be an ask for a delegation.
Councilmember Sherlock?
Thanks. I'm interested in, with the 95th Sports Park area, looking into a less grand version of what we have, because that seems like it seems a little out of reach. And I've talked to a few people that in the community that have put out there as an idea of just a more simple field where you can start renting it out a lot quicker, and then maybe in the future we add on to it, but be more incremental instead of going for this. I mean, the price on that is $18 million, so I don't know if we're ever going to do that.
You're right, definitely. And the plan does have 3 phases. And if you look, the exhibit that's in there, it's essentially going from east to west. So I think the first phase is that first soccer field, and there's a smaller parking area. And then the second phase is the 2 other fields. So there's definitely that option to either to build over time or just to build small and just stay there. So that's definitely scalable.
Yeah.
Councilmember Charbonneau?
Yeah, we can wrap up on the topic in a second. I just wanted to emphasize, I think, a couple things. One, none of this would happen without grant funding. None of this proceed with, staff can design and spend a little bit of time there. None of it happens without grant funding, without that consideration. I think we had this conversation in Community and Economic Development Committee of looking at the land that we have and what can we do with the land that we have. In terms of, square footage, square mileage, there's not a lot. This is one of the spots where we could really look at something. So I would be interested knowing that it doesn't proceed without grant funding. It doesn't proceed without having that, the 18 million is not coming from us per se. It's coming from many sources, the county, the state, commerce potentially, and just, it's a project I think I would like to see us sort of, I don't know if I guess my understanding before is that we might have to pick one or the other, but I think hearing that they're not necessarily competitive, I think it's something that if we want to see us direct staff to continue to work on for all those reasons. Adding something where there's not anything, something where, when I was a kid, people would go ride their dirt bikes, candidly, and there's not much there currently. Adding something there could bring a lot of value, I think.
Okay, anybody else? Councilmember Tallman?
So a lot of discussion on this, but it doesn't sound like there's a lot of competition between the 2 big programs. And we should keep the Lake Bourne master plan, the amphitheater moving forward. And as we're considering developing the 95th Park. Am I reading that right?
I would say that's right. The main competition will be for construction dollars. And one thing I forgot to point out is there's a couple other funding opportunities. There's either bonds for something like a recreational facility if you show a revenue stream. There's also a potential a parks levy. Other cities have been successful in that, either a parks levy or a parks and sidewalk when you show a project list to it. So that's just other opportunities besides grants. So grants are definitely the preferred, but if they're unsuccessful after grants, so you either look at an option of deferring the project or looking at alternative revenue sources.
Okay, well, I got a few questions then I'll ask you. So the design phase, Director Bronze, so the design of either one of these or both at the same time, that's a staff time and effort to do that, right? Is that correct? With public outreach perhaps?
Correct, and I did I apologize if I didn't intend that they would both be at the same time. I still see the 95th as something further down the road. You could do the fiscal analysis or do some grassroots reaching out to solicit interest versus the actual design, like preparing construction drawings on the amphitheater. I see that as happening first for Lake Bourne.
Okay. I'll simply echo what Councilmember Charbonneau said originally. I think 95th is where we should go, right? Because ultimately it will be a revenue stream for the city, right? There's a big space there and it can be developed in phases, and we've had public outreach suggesting that. And it wouldn't just be a Newcastle attraction, it would probably be full all the time. I mean, even if we did just one phase, I can see us generating revenue right away and continuing to grow that area. So I always thought it was an either or as well. I thought we were going to pick one or the other, but my personal choice would be, as soon as we're able to do something at 95th, that should be our priority, because that will be most beneficial to the city. That'll get us a revenue stream. That'll, get more people into the area, right? We're always hearing about, we want to attract people into businesses. So, they're going to go downtown after they're done playing perhaps, right? So
Right.
I think that should be where our focus should be. Now, I know we'll talk about this again when we talk about the capital plans later, right? But just initially, if you're looking for direction, I'm kind of hearing, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong, that we do want to kind of elevate the design and pursuit of 95th, right? Because of all the potential benefits there.
Sure.
Agreed? Anybody?
Got it. Just one thing I heard, revenue, I'm certainly not an expert in this topic, but I would not expect this to be a significant revenue generator
Right.
by any means. It would just ideally it would cover its costs and then provide a little bit more.
Right. No, I realize that. It's
Okay.
not, we're not going to make a fortune on it.
Right, okay.
Yeah, but it's revenue, right?
Yes, hopefully.
Do you need any more from this council
I
to get
don't
direction?
think so, and we can kind of polish that when we would come to you this summer with our typical 6-year update. That would be a time to kind of put into pencil what we've heard and then kind of get some further input.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good discussion, everybody. Thank you. City manager, what's next?
Then last item on the list is town hall planning. Really, we wanted to put the draft agenda in front of the council, and that's really a council discussion to have as far as, does that look good? Do you want something to change? But we also wanted to maybe have at least an initial discussion about, as we've talked about town halls for this year, the discussion has generally been, we want to do 2 of them. And so we just wanted to maybe at least start a discussion on what the second one, is it just going to be a second one like the one that we're planning for in May? Or is there, should staff be planning for something in particular? What's the timing of that? And so it was those 2 things. The first one is upcoming May 7th town hall at Risden Middle School, making sure that agenda looks good, and if it doesn't, what do you want to change? And then, just putting that discussion in front of the council as far as additional town halls, and should staff be planning anything in particular for those? What's the timing of that? Just so that we can make sure we keep it on our radar and prepare for it down the road.
Comments on the town hall? Deputy Mayor?
I think the second one we discussed somewhere in the fall, budget season, so that, they can get a initial glimpse of next year's budget and then how we are doing on the current year's, expenses. So end of August, September. That was what I was thinking, but, again, we can discuss.
Councilmember Charbonneau, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for bringing this together. I think what I'd be interested in seeing both in this one and the next one, I think having the bulk of the time be question and answer session is good from the sense of folks can have their concerns addressed. It's less preparation work for staff, right? Because you're present to answer a question per se, but there's less, you don't need to prepare a presentation, something like that. I'd be interested too, I don't know, I'm open to the idea of maybe like splitting folks up per se, if we put 4 council members somewhere and 3 another. primarily because I worry about the volume. I think a lot of folks have questions and don't get their question answered when they attend something like that, just because it's one by one going up to a microphone and ask a question. So if there's any ideas in terms of how to get a higher volume of questions, because I care more about folks feeling like their concern was heard by the government. You know, sometimes it's things we can't do anything about. A lot of the times it's that, but that they can engage with us and we can have that conversation with them. So I'm open to splitting up or something else. I think already having it be the 60+ minutes is great, and looking at something similar in October, September, November, whenever that makes sense.
Councilmember Tillman?
Yeah, I appreciate Councilmember Charbonneau's comments, but I would not be in favor of any kind of breakouts. I think it's important that the community hear from the entire city council and not just a portion of the city council.
My personal thoughts is you have three things here at the beginning: city manager, the opening, right? Obviously, we'll just introduce ourselves, but I think we can talk maybe a minute about the comp plan, but there's been enough discussion about it in the community. I really want this to be a majority of question and answer from the public. So I see you also have the chief on here. He was supposed to speak for a couple minutes at our public safety meeting, and he just went on, right? We don't want to have that chance of, just with all respect, taking off and taking up the time. So minimizing the introductions and the updates. Maybe we'll run out of questions and we'll have time at the end. We can add some updates, but I mean, who knows how many people will come? I hope it's well attended. I hope that people do ask lots of questions, right? And I think we'll be able to manage it just fine. So in terms of the outline, I think it's okay, just less stuff up front. That's my personal thoughts. And I would see the same thing in our second one as well, right? This is really about the public. We need to make sure it's about the public. So, any other thoughts, Councilor?
Do we want anything up front?
Well, introductions from all of us. We could ask the staff members to stand up, and we could say something like, if you have, the comp plan is underway. If you have questions, please seek out, the community development director, or, we could ask planning commission members to raise their hand, and we could ask people to reach out to them, but or invite them to attend the planning commission meeting. I really want to focus this on the public. Just personally, is how I feel about it. Any other? Go ahead, Councilman Schultz.
Thanks. I was just wanting to, this looks great for May 7th, but what does the finance director or committee have the budget calendar yet? So I'm just curious, if we want the other town hall to be focused on the budget, if that's what we want, then do we want to wait until after the preliminary budget comes out? I mean, that makes sense to me in my brain, but maybe I'm forgetting something.
I think we can, that'll be a little bit of a moving target, right? So we'll get through this first one, we'll start to discuss it, and then the finance committee can recommend a specific point in time to do that. So it's hard to say right now. It's really hard to pick.
Yeah.
Usually we'll have a planning calendar draft for the finance committee, like the May meeting or the June meeting. We'll plan on having a budget calendar draft for the finance committee at the meeting that would be towards the end of May, just because that also initiates staff's process. And so we'll make sure we consider where that might fit as a part of that process.
Yeah, I was just thinking that it would be kind of nice if it happened after Newcastle Days, you could promote it a lot during Newcastle Days, but I don't know if that would work with the budget calendar.
Sure, we could try that. And then city manager, I would also recommend that maybe, as people come in at 6:30, maybe you have a couple displays about the comp plan or something, right? You could have a couple whiteboards or something, right? Just to kind of tease people, and they can ask questions later about it.
Sure.
Okay. Any other questions, comments?
We'll also, similar to previous years, we'll invite the Planning and Community Activities Commission to have tables and their displays if they would like, along with our Newcastle nonprofits, so Newcastle Trails, Arts Council, Historic Society.
And then we'll discuss, between now, I guess, we'll do something like we did last year where one person walks around with the microphone and hands it to people, so
Yep.
it's controlled. Okay. All right, seeing no other questions or comments, we will adjourn for 5 minutes to the regular meeting then. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the regular Newcastle City Council meeting for April 2nd. The time is 7 o'clock. This meeting is being recorded and it is also being broadcast live on our city's YouTube channel. Please, everybody rise and join us in the flag salute.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
City Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Burford.
Here.
Councilmember Sherlock.
Here.
Councilmember Griffin.
Here.
Councilmember Tallman.
Here.
Councilmember Charbonneau.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Lakotia.
Here,
And Mayor Clark.
Here.
All here, Mayor.
Thank you, City Clerk. Agenda approval is next on our list. Does anybody object or require a change to the agenda? Seeing none, show the agenda approved as written. Next up, we have public comment. Anybody wishing to speak at public comment has 3 minutes. Please come up to the podium. If your name is signed up there, you'll have 3 minutes. Once the 3 minutes is up, the bell will sound and you'll be able to have to stop. We'll ask you to conclude. Please turn on the microphone and speak directly into the microphone we have so everybody can hear what you have to say. First up on our list tonight is Guy Granger. Guy, come on up.
That better? Good, thanks. I was going to talk on one topic, but now based on something recent, two. The first topic is Make Creek Park Trail. I want to, on behalf of frequent users, which include me, I want to acknowledge and express appreciation for the great work that's been done over the last couple of years and is ongoing on that trail. It had deteriorated to the point in many areas where it was almost hard to walk it unless you were very agile. And many improvements have been made, and there's some work still continuing on the west end of the trail, and me and many others look forward very much to the completion of that work. Second topic is traffic calming, and my wife was down on the trail today and came up to Southeast May Creek Park Drive and had heard a vehicle racing up and down the road, making multiple passes down the road at high speed and around the traffic circle, squealing, drifting around the circle and coming back up as fast as she could, and took a video of that car. It had no license plates. License plates have been removed, so any license plate reader won't make any difference. It was traveling in the center of the road, well away from the sides, so anything keeping it in a lane wouldn't affect its behavior. I think the traffic calming measures, many of which are being proposed, will do a great job to help those who are attempting to obey the laws. The deliberate racers, which are, I don't live near 116th, and so I can't comment there, but I do live near the Southeast May Creek Park Drive, and there are frequent racers, modified cars and motorcycles. Motorcycles in the summer go at frightening speeds up the road. So, and if there are speed humps that are not full width, they just go in between the speed humps at high speed and try to set times against each other, see how fast they can go. Anyway, those are my comments. I also applaud the efforts for traffic calming, but there are two issues, those attempting to obey the laws and those that are attempting to violate the laws. Thank you. Good evening.
Thank you, Guy. Next up on our list, Carol Simpson.
Hello there, everybody. Carol Simpson from Olympus 2. All right, 4. Number 4. Nice day. It's spring, yay. The trees are leafing out. And yes, trail maintenance probably is needed out there. I also had two things I wanted to comment on. Number one is your agenda packet last meeting was in error. The Finance Committee did not make any recommendation about ARPA fund spending. So that's an error. And that was confirmed in the Finance Committee meeting minutes approved at the most recent Finance Committee meeting. So that's an error. There was no recommendation from the Finance Committee on ARPA funding. And the second, I'd like to speak about the Boardwalk project and where we are today in Lake Bourne Park. The Boardwalk project, P22, and where we are in Lake Bourne Park. The city is currently committed to spending $2.281 million on that project. And it was originally estimated when we started out as being a $1.3 million project. So we're almost $1 million over budget. I know we're getting some, and I'm speaking in the royal we, because I'm a citizen here too. This affects all of us. It's us. It's our city. So I'm going to use the royal we. We are committed to this, and it's over budget. And how does the staff manage a budget that goes over budget like that? You got to watch the budget. They budget at the fund level. So if they appropriate $2-3 million of park funds for a variety of park projects, if one looks like it's going over budget, it's easy to stop work on the others and say, we don't have the staff, we don't have the time to complete those. We're going to use those funds for this other project that's going over budget. We'll be worried about funding those other projects next year. Happens time and again. That's how projects are funded, either for transportation or parks or stormwater. That's how it's sometimes done. So watch the numbers. There's been $291,000 of change orders. There's 11 change orders to date on the project. I totally understand that. I'm a retired architect. I understand there's unforeseen circumstances, there's changes in the design, things happen. You want to change, make it better sometimes, but sometimes you can start out with value engineering. And before you go out to bid, get some input from a variety of engineers on, is this the best way to build this? Is this going to be the most cost-effective way? How can we do it cheaper, prettier, better, faster? And get some value engineering from more people. We have a small staff. It might be helpful once in a while to spend a little bit of money to get a better value engineering, to get a better project in the long run. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Next up on our list, Linda Newing.
Good evening. My name is Linda Muschetti Newing. I live in the Terry Meadows area. Tonight, I'd like to speak to you in regards to the Lake Bourne Park Master Plan and the amphitheater specifically. I can speak to you tonight on multiple different levels as a Community Activities Commissioner, as a Commission Vice Chair, as a council member, as a Deputy Mayor, or as a four-year mayor. But tonight, I come to you as a resident who supported the Lake Bourne Master Plan in 2015. I participated in the very beginning portion of that plan, interviewing consultants to determine which plan and which consultant we should go with. We selected Berger. That is about an $80,000 contract to develop that plan. I always swore I would never toss it on a shelf and allow it to collect dust. That's one of my pet peeves. The amphitheater is designed in a location where it would terrace naturally with the terrain of the park. I realize it's an expensive project. The stage at Lake Bourne Park is annually needing expensive repairs to make it stable. It is not a stable structure on a regular basis. It would be very nice if we had a structured rooftop over the stage and to protect it year-round. Not that we would use it in the middle of winter, but Lake Bourne Park is our most heavily used park. It is our crown jewel. We have gotten funds in the past from the county, and getting more grant funds, I know there's a stiff competition. I realize that. It's tough. But please don't lose sight of this park component. It could be so vital and so beautiful to our community. Also, if you chose to maybe push on the 95th project, please understand that park, if you're going to have sporting events there, it will require an event management. will require maintenance. I know past councils haven't been really keen on funding additional FTEs, but perhaps you could take that into consideration. Also on the west side of the park, or of the city, near the location I live, the Heemster property does contain a brand new 5-acre park that will be a great amenity for the west side. So please, I just can't encourage you more than to keep your sights on that amphitheater at Lake Warren Park. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. I see nobody else signed up. Last call, anybody in the audience would like to speak that did not sign up? Okay. Seeing none, the public comment is now closed. We have no ceremonial presentations. We are moving on now to council comment, and we'll start with Councilmember Tallman tonight.
No comment.
Okay. Councilmember Griffin, do you have comment for us?
Thank you, Mayor Clark. Yes, I do. I have a booklet here called the operating procedure and things you need to know as a council member elected. I got this when I was elected 4 years ago. Understand we're not passing them out now. We're getting them off the website. But there's a lot of interesting reading in here and a lot of not so interesting reading. But the things that it tells me is that as a council member, if we're a council member on Tuesday night, guess what? Sunday afternoon, we're still a council member. And we can't write on the social media things about, well, the meeting that we had the other night, I wasn't happy with the way it went. It didn't go like I wanted it. They're doing this or they're doing that, and I don't approve of it. In here, on page 7, it will tell you that 4 people or more, the majority makes a decision, and whoever makes a decision, everybody else is supposed to fall in line and support it. They're not supposed to go chipping away at it and say, I don't agree with it. And then they think they get immunity by the fact that saying, well, this is not as a council comment. This is my own personal comment. Well, personally, you're still a council member. So until you resign or you're rotated off, you are a council member. And I would encourage all of you to get a copy. I'm getting an updated one tonight. And I think you should read it. You should understand what it says because it's important for us who sit up here to understand what it is we're doing. Thank you very much.
Councilmember Sherlock.
Thank you. I just wanted to say congratulations to our officially Community Development Director, Erin Fitzgibbons. Congratulations. We're really excited that you're taking on that new role. And also just wanted to say on record, goodbye and thank you to Davi, our parks planner, who recently left. Really appreciated all of his great work. Thank you.
Councilmember Burford.
I want to congratulate to Erin as well. Also, I met with Davi a few times. We also worked together for the horse trail. I really appreciate his work and service and also engaging many people in our community. Also, I'd like to share that our Newcastle Fruits and Produce reopening day truly brought me so much joy after work last Friday. I went there and just saw like all the vibrant colors and fresh produce. Really, I think literally I would say we are in spring in Newcastle, and I congratulate on their reopening. Also, I'm so grateful to have been a part of the Newcastle Historic Cemetery cleanup day with Ross, Steve, Bill, Chris, Jody, Eagle Scouts volunteers, and Bob and other remarkable individuals. And it was incredible to connect with so many dedicated volunteers in our city and also get to know more about our Newcastle history, especially get to speak with Steve Baima. And he told me more about his grandparents, his parents, and also the Chinese coal miners who were buried on the hillside. And we're trying to identify more, and just also the ongoing working plan. I also had a pleasure to meet with our city works there too. And just want to share, they're happy to see me as our council member and to be there. I actually got an email from Steve. Another one, because I'm all about community engagement. This Saturday, our dedicated Newcastle, the only dedicated, really humorous figure in our city. Jim Quigg. So he and his family, including his children, and also a lot of our Newcastle volunteers, including our police chief, they were all there. We had such a wonderful Newcastle egg hunt event. This year, people also doubled the participants. I was very happy to see a lot of residents and children and families. So it was a great day. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Charbonneau.
Thank you. I had a good time on Saturday getting to go up and speak and welcome everyone to the Easter egg hunt. I think a lot of families outside Newcastle, but it was really cool to see. I think hundreds of kids, over 900 plus plastic eggs. Really fun little community event. I also had a very good time helping run the all sort of district middle school wrestling meet. Got to ref a little bit, got to run the scoreboard for the matches. Congrats to Risdon Middle School on placing second. It was of all the schools in the region, it was Risdon and one other school sort of at the top, and sort of everyone else. So it was really great to see a lot of good young men and women getting into the sport. Congrats, Aaron Fitzgibbon. Shouldn't call you by your first name. Now Community Development Director, no longer interim. It's just really cool to see you have worked with the city for a while and go from planner to a higher level planner to now the role you are now. So excited for you, and wanted to give a thank you to Davi as well for leaving. I think I helped with a mentorship program for undergraduate public policy students, and I was mentoring a young Latino man who we brought to City Hall, got to meet different folks, and for him to meet another Latino man in local government and actually get to hear from him and hear about that process, I think it was a really, really cool moment, and really appreciate him doing that and all the work he's done as well. That is all I have. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Locotia.
Thank you. Congratulations, Erin, our new community director. And also would like to, I've heard really good things about Davi, and good luck to him. I'm sure he'll do very well wherever he goes. Thank you.
Okay, mayor comments, which is me. So Aaron, congratulations, right? And last meeting, I mentioned about Vietnam Veteran Day. So in the meantime, since the last meeting, I'm working with my VFW post, and we're going to have a ceremony here on June 4th, prior to the council meeting at 6:30, to honor Vietnam veterans, those who've not received the proper honor. Surprisingly, there's quite a few who are unaware of the 50th commemoration honor that they're due. So we've got quite a few so far. So if you know of a Vietnam veteran in the community, Newcastle community, please either send me their name or contact them, have them get a hold of me, because I'd like to get as many as we can. I know we've missed some. We haven't got them all, but keep that in mind. So that's all I have tonight, and that ends our comments. Next on our agenda, we have a end of session legislative report with our consultant, Holly Sanabria. Am I saying that right, Holly?
Yes, you can say it like that, Sanabria.
Sanabria, okay. Thank you.
Is that good, Councilmember Griffin? Great.
Good evening. I'm Holly Sanabria, state lobbyist for the city. It's great to be with you all tonight to provide a report on the 2024 state legislative session. Before I get started, I wanted to note that in addition to this presentation, there is a written report that was sent on Friday that goes into much more detail on all of the issues I cover and provides a more comprehensive overview. Let's go to the next slide if we can, or if we can open my slides. Or am I doing it? Do you want me to do
Do we
it?
have a presentation available?
No
Okay,
worries.
one moment.
Perfect. Thank you. We can go to the second slide. So just to, I'll plan to cover 4 topics in tonight's update. The first is an overview of the 2024 session. The second is drilling down into the specific outcomes of the city's legislative priorities, which were developed prior to session as a set list of priorities that we would spend the bulk of our time advocating for in 2024. And then next I'll review the additional legislative issues that are relevant to the city and specifically around housing policies that did or did not pass this session, which will nicely dovetail into Ms. Fitzgibbon's presentation after me. And then I'll wrap up with some next steps as we prepare for the 2025 session, and we can go to the next slide. Just to provide some context, the legislature operates on a 2-year cycle that aligns with the state's biennial budgets. This year was the second session of the 23-25 biennium, meaning it was the short session out of the 2, lasting 60 days, beginning on January 8th and ending on time on March 7th. For a short session, the legislature focuses on adopting supplemental budgets by making amendments or adjustments to the previous budgets that were passed in 2023. And this includes the operating, capital, and transportation budgets. There were a little over 1,100 bills introduced during the 2023 session that were not passed into law and were carried over for consideration during the 2024 session. And then in addition to those bills that were carried over, an additional 1,560 were introduced. And then of these, the legislature passed 376 bills into law. The Democrats continue to hold the majority in both the House and Senate. The new dynamic that existed in this short session was the introduction of 6 initiatives to the legislature. The initiatives are bills that are sponsored by the people of Washington and are ideas submitted to the legislature for their consideration. The legislature had 3 options when they are presented with an initiative. They can adopt it as presented, they can adopt a different version, and both the original and the legislature's version goes to the ballot, or they can take no action and the initiative goes directly to the ballot. So for 3 of the initiatives, the legislature chose to adopt them as presented. So that was the vehicular pursuits, parental rights, and state local income tax. And then for the remaining 3, which was the Climate Commitment Act repeal, long-term care opt-out, and capital gains repeal, they chose to do nothing and will let the voters decide in November. So with that really quick recap of kind of an overview of session, we'll dive into the budgets. As mentioned, there are 3 budgets the legislature focuses on, which are the operating, capital, and transportation budgets. The short session is dedicated to passing supplemental budgets by making amendments to the biennial budgets. So when the legislature comes back in 2025, they'll start this 2-year cycle over again for the 25-27 biennial budget. So moving to the first budget, the operating budget is the largest of the 3. It funds all state agency operations, with the largest expense being the K-12 education system. The February revenue forecast, which is the forecast that was used to develop the supplemental budget, predicted a $1.2 billion increase in state revenue beyond the level expected when the biennial budget was adopted. The supplemental budget allocates an additional $2.1 billion, bringing the biennial operating budget to $71.9 billion. I think that's helpful to recognize that the biennial budget was $69 billion and the supplemental was $2 billion. So that's how small of a budget the supplemental is compared to the underlying budget. One significant outcome of the supplemental budget for many local governments is an elimination of the 25% cost share requirement for jurisdictions sending new recruits to the basic law enforcement academy. That will take effect in the new state fiscal year starting July 1. It also includes $34 million allocated to local governments for homeless housing programs and services, and of this amount, $12 million is allocated to King County. Moving on to the capital budget, this budget funds public and nonprofit construction projects excluding transportation. Structurally, it's funded by bonds that derive from a portion of the operating budget. The supplemental budget is $1.3 billion, bringing the biennial capital budget to $10.3 billion. The additional capacity primarily comes from the Climate Commitment Act, federal funds, and the Model Toxins Control Account. There were very limited remaining bonding capacity for the supplemental. And because much of the revenue comes from the Climate Commitment Act, much of it is not available until January 2025 and is contingent on the failure of the initiative 2117. There was $72.5 million allocated to local community projects, which is the category the city has received funding for in the past. The size of the awards in a supplemental year is traditionally very small, and this year was no exception. Considering there are 49 legislative districts, each district received roughly $1.5 million. Notable investments in the supplemental capital budget include $127 million for the Housing Trust Fund and over $100 million in behavioral health facilities around the state. The transportation budget funds the state's transportation system, which includes highways, ferries, active transportation, transit, and all transportation-related state agencies. This was by far the most constrained of the three budgets, and budget writers have had the greatest challenge agreeing on this budget. The supplemental budget allocates an additional $1 billion, bringing the biennial budget to $14.6 billion, and most of this new spending is directed to a handful of areas. This is cost overruns on two mega projects, including the 520 bridge and I-405, fish barrier removal, capital improvements to ferries, and highway preservation. The new spending comes from federal funds, the Climate Commitment Act revenue, and Advanced Move Ahead Washington revenues. Again, with much of the spending coming from the Climate Commitment Act dollars, it's not available until January 2025, and again is contingent on the initiative failing. Traditional transportation revenue sources like the gas tax, licensing and permit fees are down by 8% since the biennium began. So a lot to unpack there, but there's a really quick rundown of the budgets. Let's go to the next slide. So for the city's legislative priorities, the first item on the agenda is relating to transportation, one being the May Creek Park Drive multimodal improvements. This is a project the city has made great progress on at the local level with local investment. Given the legislature's interest in decreasing greenhouse gas emissions and expanding safe access to other modes of transportation, we have continued to seek funding support for this project, specifically requesting $800,000 for the section from 121st to 124th Avenue Southeast. So as I shared in the budget recap earlier on in my presentation, the legislature continues to grapple with this ongoing fiscal challenge related to the transportation budget. Revenues have declined, there have been many cost runs, and pending decisions such as the Initiative 2117 have made it difficult for lawmakers to make additional investments this session. Transportation budget leaders were not accepting any project requests this year. However, since Newcastle's project was previously submitted, the request continues to remain in the queue for future funding when it becomes available. I'd also encourage the city, and I know you are, to look into grant funding opportunities because even if unsuccessful, it demonstrates to the legislature that we have pursued other funding avenues. The other item is to support the ongoing improvements to the I-405 corridor. The I-405 SR 167 Executive Advisory Committee encouraged the legislature to provide an upfront investment in the 23-25 biennium for preliminary engineering work on the projects remaining in the funding program. That includes interchange improvements on Northeast 6th Street and the Coal Creek Parkway. The final 2024 budget allocates $2 million for the I-405 Renton to Bellevue widening and express toll lane project in the 23-25 biennium. I'll also just touch on a policy item that was highlighted as an interest from city staff, House Bill 2384, which allows cities and counties expanded use of automated traffic safety cameras. All revenue generated by each authorized camera remains with the local government, and all revenue from current cameras is grandfathered in. So new revenue beyond a certain threshold is limited to use on traffic safety activities. It also includes some changes on who is authorized to review traffic camera violations, and provides a 50% reduction in fines resulting from an infraction captured by a camera for individuals on public assistance. The next item on the agenda is public safety. There is ongoing funding for therapeutic courts and co-responder programs. The legislature adopted Initiative 2113, allowing police officers to engage in vehicular pursuit if they have reasonable suspicion to believe that a person has violated the law. They also extended liability protections to co-responders, which also included the behavioral health section, and I included it in both, so apologies for the duplicate. They passed a bill, diving into behavioral health now, they passed a bill to allow 23-hour crisis relief centers to serve children. There's also funding within the operating budget to support this effort. They passed Senate Bill 6251, which allows behavioral health administrative service organizations to serve as primary system coordinators within each of the 10 regional service areas and convene regional partners and stakeholders to coordinate on the behavioral health crisis response and suicide prevention system. It also requires 988 contact hubs to enter data sharing agreements with regional crisis lines that include real-time information sharing. And the operating budget also includes funding for this effort as well. There is $15.3 million provided to support the establishment of a residential treatment facility to provide specialized care for youth with complex needs, such as developmental disabilities and behavioral challenges, and to provide individualized care and structured support. And then the last item on the agenda is affordable housing. The first bill, House Bill 2012, allows voter-approved levy lid lifts and certain city and county funds as qualifying funding sources for a project to receive the nonprofit housing property tax exemption. Additionally, there was Senate Bill 6175, which establishes a local option sales and use tax deferral for projects that convert commercial buildings to residential purposes and dedicates 10% of the units to households making 80% of the area median income or less. I shared some information about this in my previous slide deck on the budgets, but $127.5 million is included in the Housing Trust Fund, and $232 million is dedicated to addressing housing and homelessness. And this includes emergency housing, shelter, temporary housing, and permanent supportive housing programs. So I'll now share some further information on the bills that were introduced this session relating to housing and land use. Some did not pass, others did. The two listed under did not pass are worth noting because it is highly likely that they both will return in some form or fashion next session. So House Bill 2160 was a continued conversation from last year and has gone through several iterations. This proposal was governor-requested legislation that mandates cities to allow transit-oriented development densities for residential and mixed-use development around light rail and bus rapid transit stops. It also requires cities planning under the GMA to allow new residential and mixed-use development within any station area at the transit-oriented development density of at least 3 floor area ratio on average if a city exempts up to 25% of the station areas. The other bill I'll highlight is House Bill 1245, another controversial topic that continued from 2023 but didn't end up passing this session. It requires cities to allow the splitting of a single residential lot and prohibits cities from imposing certain regulations on that lot if it is in the result of a lot split. So those that passed this session is House Bill 1998, which requires cities and counties to allow co-living housing on any lot within an urban growth area that allows at least 6 multifamily residential units. Additionally, a city or county may not treat a sleeping unit in co-living housing as more than 1/2 of a dwelling unit for purpose of calculating fees for sewer connections, unless the city finds the connection fees should exceed the 1/2 threshold. And then House Bill 2071 directs the State Building Code Council to convene 2 technical advisory groups, one to recommend changes to apply the Washington State Residential Code to multiplex housing, and another to recommend changes needed to the International Building Code to allow dwelling units with less than 190 square feet. Additionally, the Office of Regulatory and Innovation Assistance is directed to develop an optional standard energy code plan that meets or exceeds all energy code regulation for residential housing subject to the International Residential Code. There isn't funding included in the budget for these efforts. House Bill 2321 modifies certain provisions of the 2023 Middle Housing Policy, so kind of that Middle Housing 2.0 bill. The bill requires that cities with a population of at least 25,000 must allow 6 of the 9 types of middle housing, and then cities with less than 25,000 people can choose the number of middle housing types that meet minimum density requirements. The bill also allows middle housing to be built on lots where a portion of the lot is a critical area. I'll also just add, although the bill doesn't specify, Department of Commerce was tasked with creating guidelines for this law and has clarified that housing densities only apply around bus rapid transit stops once construction of those stops have begun. And lastly, House Bill 1054, which prohibits owners in a common interest community from regulating or limiting the number of unrelated persons that may occupy a unit. Lawful limits on occupants per square foot or applicable health and safety provisions established in building codes or a city or county ordinance do not violate this prohibition. This is an area that cities were preempted a couple years back, and now the bill applies to HOAs as well. Okay, so in closing, lobbying is a year-round effort. So the accomplishments made thus far have required preparation and advocacy throughout the interim. We have seen time and time again how effective it is to do so, and it's greatly appreciated to have you all engaged throughout the year. So just a few next steps as we move forward and prepare for the 2025 session. My advice is to always begin with gratitude. Legislators put their lives on hold for 60 days or 105 for the long sessions to do the necessary work of adopting budgets and refining laws, and recognizing that that sacrifice definitely goes a long way. Whether you see them when you're at an event or around town, please go out of your way to thank them for serving the city and the state. We are working on coordinating a time to have the 41st delegation out for a ribbon cutting for the Crosstown Trail project. So they worked extremely hard to secure $800,000 towards that project last session. Next, there are several state agencies that are in charge with implementing grant programs for various purposes. Over the next several months is when those application windows will be occurring, and the state agencies will then make recommendations to the 2025 legislature on what projects should receive funding, and to be competitive for any of these funding requests in the 2025 session. If we do ask for any funding, it's my strong recommendation that the city apply to any applicable grant programs this year. So as I mentioned earlier, even if we're not successful, it demonstrates that the city is taking advantage of these opportunities. As part of our preparation for session, my job is to help the city develop an interim action plan and next steps to continue to elevate top priorities and prepare for the 2025-27 biennial budget development and the 2025 session. And between now and the next legislative session, there will be a campaign cycle where the entire House and half the Senate is up for re-election. This includes Senator Wellman. We also have a new governor, or we will have a new governor, and several other changes to statewide elected office and potential impacts to state budgets if any of the 3 initiatives pass. There are a lot of unknowns about next session, but what we do know is the legislature will have to develop new biennial budgets, and we want to be prepared to take advantage of any opportunities that arise through that process. And before you know it, the 2025 legislative session begins on January 13th and will be the first year of the new biennium. So to prepare for that session, we'll need to update the city's legislative priorities. And with that, I'll just say it's an honor to advocate for the city of Newcastle. It's exciting to go through all of the accomplishments the city has made thus far and continues to tackle each year. So thank you for the opportunity to be a part of the team. I appreciate it. Happy to take any questions, or if you think of any at a later time, I'm available. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Holly. Thank you very much.
Yes, of course.
So we'll entertain any questions. Deputy Mayor Lacotia, go ahead.
Thank you, Holly, for the presentation. Thank you for your work. I didn't quite catch the state income tax. It went too fast for me. Is it going to be put on the ballot? What's the deal with the state income?
Yes, so that's one of the initiatives that will be included on the ballot in November.
Other questions? Councilmember Burford?
Yeah, you mentioned, I also noticed there are a lot of cities, they sent their delegations to see legislators and to seek support. So as we didn't get to go there, I did mention, I hope any recommendations, one would be a better time for the next one we go up at the beginning or the middle of the session.
Yeah, I thank you for bringing that up. I would love for you all to come at any point, but I would say, I'd say beginning middle time frame is great. The Association of Washington Cities has a city action week, and you all are welcome to come during that time. Many cities are there during that time, so it is difficult to get in with legislators. But I would say, yes, for a long session, we have a little bit more time, so that's nice. But I would say, session starts in January. I'd say February, March timeframe is great to have you all visit, kind of go over what's been occurring during the legislative session thus far, and also, hey, just a reminder, here's our priorities. Keep up the good work. We're here for you. Kind of just rallying up the team, and the legislative delegation always really appreciates seeing you.
Thank you.
Yes, of course.
Councilmember Charbonneau, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Holly. Really appreciate it. The end of session report, especially, it's super detailed, and
Yes.
we would definitely recommend folks take a look at that. I was just curious, so there's a lot, I might email you individual questions about a couple things here, but I was curious, looking forward for next year,
Yep.
what you anticipate, maybe it's, I know a lot of times bills might die and then they come back and pass, or something like that. What do you anticipate being the big sort of pushes or potential bills next year, and things for us to keep in mind?
I'd say those two housing related bills, so the transit oriented development and the lot splitting conversation will continue. Possibly the property tax cap discussion, raising it to a 3% property tax cap with tying it to inflation. I'd also say transportation is going to be at the forefront. They have to face it, and they're also going to have to consider another method to. Currently, they're thinking about the road usage charge, and there's a lot of opposition to that mechanism. So they're going to have to talk about what kind of program they can utilize to take over the gas tax and find a way for there to be more of an equal playing ground when it comes to paying for our streets. So that'll definitely be at the forefront, I would say. Of course.
Councilmember Sherlock?
Thank you, Holly. One thing that just caught my eye was you mentioned near the beginning that there was something was eliminated, 25% cost share for local governments for BLEA. What is that exactly? And does that affect Newcastle?
I believe so. I would think a portion of the funds you provide to King County would.
Because that was for like police.
Yeah, so it's to send potential officers to basic law enforcement academy.
Okay.
Yep.
Ms. Pringle, do you want to?
We'll definitely be clarifying as an oversight committee for our police contract what the effect of that will be on our costs.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, so I have a question for you, Holly. Thank you. So there's a lot of action and bills and initiatives around housing, right? And You know, I can't imagine we're the only city that wants the state to leave us alone and let us do our own thing, right? There's got to be tremendous pushback across the state. But the legislature just goes right ahead and just kind of dictates to us what's going to happen. What's your sense? Is that slowing down? Is it accelerating, or does the state legislature simply not care, honestly, what the cities think about controlling their own, growth? What's your thoughts?
When you have one political party in the majority of all three chambers, you have the executive and then you have the Senate and the House, have a strong majority of Democrats. And that has been their number one priority. So it really depends on how this election goes and who ends up being in leadership next year. It could totally be dropped. The conversation could be dropped. It could be brought back up and continued. But that definitely was part of the messaging we shared, was please give us space and time to implement what you've pushed on us so far. It's just, right now we don't know. I would say it's just pending at this point.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you so much, Holly, for your time.
Of course.
Appreciate you coming here.
Thank you.
Brief
I'll
us. Thank you.
still stick around just in case there's any questions about the housing related bills. Thank you.
Okay, all right, thank you. That's a perfect segue into Director Fitzgibbons is going to give us a little bit of an overview of how this affects Newcastle. Go ahead, Director Fitzgibbons.
Thank you. Thank you, Holly, too. Can I have a mouse? Thank you. Thanks. All right. So how will all this housing affect Newcastle? I'm just going to start today with some definitions. We're going to talk a little bit about what's called unit lot. I'm not tall enough. Unit lot subdivision. We're going to talk about ADUs, middle housing. We're going to talk a little bit more about co-living, and we can talk about 1054 if we need to any further, but I do think that Ms. Sanabria's presentation was pretty much covered anything I would have said about that. So what is middle housing? Just to be sure we're all on this same page with that. It's a type of dwelling that has more than one unit within it. It's attached, but it's at the scale of what we currently see as single family housing. Historically, you might have seen a single family house get cut up into apartment type units, and that's really where this came from. Over time, they became kind of not eradicated, but they became restricted more and more in city zoning codes. And you would not see for middle housing like two detached full-size single-family homes. That's not considered middle housing. In terms of major transit stops, a lot of the bills talk about proximity to major transit stops. The city of Newcastle does not have any major transit stops under construction. We are considered to be on a future bus rapid transit line, but that is slated for 2050. So we're very far away from that. One thing that we will need to do as staff is look at our proximity to the bus rapid transit line that's going in down on 405 to see how close we are in a walk distance to that, because that could affect some of our parking requirements, but very few. So we'll stay tuned on that one. We'll come back with more information. So when we talk about unit lot subdivision, we're talking about a co-compliant, outright co-compliant lot that is then subdivided further to allow for what they call unit lots. And these unit lots you would use for, like, say, a duplex, so that you could sell both sides of the duplex fee simple. Or for an ADU, again, where you would be able to sell the ADU separately from the single family home. So some of the bills that we'll be talking about actually require unit lot subdivision as part of the language. So accessory dwelling units are smaller fully functional independent living facilities. They can be attached or detached. They are considered accessory to a principal dwelling unit. You've probably seen them in the city. Some people have them in their basements. Some people have them under garages. Those are called carriage units. Some people build additions to put ADUs in. Newcastle currently allows them, but in order to be fully compliant with the code, we're going to have to remove the requirement that we currently have for a property owner or their family member to live on the property at least 6 months of the year. So that's going to have to go away. ADUs will have to be allowed to be at least 1,000 square feet. They could be larger if desired. And we'll be working through that with the Planning Commission and then obviously come to council with our proposals. And then we have to allow the ADUs, again, to be sold separately through that unit lot subdivision process. We can restrict accessory dwelling units for being used for short-term rentals. We currently don't allow short-term rentals under 30 days in the city of Newcastle, and we could continue to do so. And of course, we can apply any regulations that would be required for the principal dwelling unit, such as building codes, surface water requirements, etc. Middle housing, cities are broken into 3 tiers based on their population size. Being under 25,000, we're a tier 3 city. We have to allow 2 units per lot in areas zoned primarily for single family. ADUs may count towards this density. So what you're most likely going to see in Newcastle, duplexes, maybe stacked flats, which would be 1 unit on top of the other. You could see ADUs. And all those different combinations could count towards this, towards the 2 units on the lot. We have to enact ministerial or very objective standards by which to review middle housing. Right now, in order to put anything other than a single family unit in a single family zone, you have to go through what's called a conditional use permit. And that's an additional, what's the word that I'm looking for? Discretionary type of permit. It goes, so we have to get rid of that requirement for 2 units on a lot. We also have to adopt these codes within 6 months of adoption of our 2024 comprehensive plan. So presumably next year around June or July. And then we also have to adopt these standards. And if we don't, the state requirements will become our requirements. They just supersede ours. And the state requirements allow for more types of units. So I think it really does behoove us to work forward on these ordinances so that we can comply and also try to get Newcastle's desires in there as much as possible. Oops, wrong button. In terms of parking regulations, the only thing that would change from what I can see is that under 2321, that Middle Housing 2.0 bill, they state that on lots no greater than 6,000 square feet, can you require more than 1 parking spot per unit for middle housing. So that would be one parking spot per unit on a lot that is 6,000 square feet and smaller. Anything larger would be 2 parking spots. And that's what we already require in our code. 6,000 square feet is the minimum lot size that we have for any zone outright allowed in the code without like a PUD or density incentive of some sort. Exceptions to these codes are lots with critical areas where the lot is completely covered by critical areas. We would not have to require more than 1 or allow more than 1 unit. And then HOA covenants are still enforceable so long as they were in effect prior to the adoption of the code of the Middle Housing Bill last year. Co-living units, these are interesting. These are sleeping units and they share kitchen facilities. So it's almost like a dorm in a way. According to the language of the bill, they work best for single person households. They provide that opportunity for people to have social interaction by having those shared kitchen facilities. Something interesting that I thought was that it said that it reduces pressure for other kinds of affordable housing, which presumably if the unit is smaller and you're sharing these kitchen facilities, then people would be paying less in rent. So that could definitely work an advantage for different housing income brackets. In terms of energy, they do require less energy, fewer demands on natural resources because they're smaller. And we have to allow them to be allowed in multifamily zoned areas. Unlike the middle housing and ADU bills, this does not have to be enacted until the end of 2025. And with that, do we have any questions?
Okay, any questions? Councilmember Tallman, go ahead.
Thank you very much for all the details. I do have some questions. So regarding the unit lot subdivisions, we have a minimum lot size of 6,000 square feet. If we split that into two, and there's one parking requirement at this point. If we split that into two, is there still one parking requirement for off-street parking requirement or two?
So the subdivision would have the off-street parking requirement before the subdivision. So you would have, like, if you built a duplex and then you did a unit lot subdivision on it, then each, depending on the lot size, let's say it was 6,000 square feet.
Or less?
Or less, then you would have, well, the or less
Oh,
is.
no, I'm sorry, 6,000 square feet, right?
Yeah,
minimum.
or less would be, it'd be prior to the subdivision. So we're looking at the size of the lot before the subdivision.
Right.
So when you do the unit lot subdivision, then if it's 6,000 square feet, then we would have one parking spot for each duplex, let's say, for each side. Or if it was 7,000 square feet, then it would be two
Okay.
per.
All right, let me ask one more. Okay, so is there any legislation that requires us to relax our setbacks?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. All right. I'm good, thank you.
Other questions for Aaron? Anybody? Councilmember Sherlock, go ahead.
Thanks. Do you know, I can't think of the word right now, I'm blanking, but the, where you have like grass compared to like pavement, permeable, semi-permeable, what, those terms, do you anticipate we have to adjust those requirements or codes to accommodate for these changes?
That's hard to say. I don't think we, at this point, I don't think we will have to. I have seen model ordinances where they suggest that you do. So I think we're gonna kind of understand that better over the next several months.
Deputy Mayor LaCourtier.
Erin, on the sleeping units, I'm just trying to understand that more. Does that apply to apartments?
Yeah, so that would be anywhere that we allow 6 units or more, multifamily of 6 units or more density. And then, so yeah, they would be more like a type of apartment. Yeah.
So for example, let's say Newcastle Commons.
Mhm.
So that would be considered a sleeping unit unless the HOA CNRs have a condition which that part is not allowed, because then that precedes the regulation, right?
So for the co-living units, that would be just allowed in any multifamily zone that we currently have. It's not subject to other.
So the HOA CNRs would not restrict, cannot restrict it if it's done before 2024 or?
No, because it would be for our multifamily districts, so I don't think we have any HOAs in our multifamily, other than, we already have condominiums. It's a good question. I think they would have to be allowed if a condominium developer came in, so, yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you.
It's a good question.
Any other questions? Councilmember Charbonneau, go ahead. Councilmember Tallman, turn off your mic, please.
Thank you. Community Development Director Fitzgibbon. I think, so we talked about ADUs a lot. I'm curious though, are there any changes that we're undergoing, whether that's due to legislation or due to comp plan updating, to make it easier to apply for an ADU? Or altering that process at all?
It's definitely a suggestion that we have heard from the state and from this council in the past. Right now, the one thing that I can say will definitely go away is the land use application part of it. There would be no fee for the land use, and we wouldn't require an affidavit any longer. Right now, we require an affidavit of having somebody live on the property, who's the owner or the family of the owner.
Okay. Seeing no other questions, thank you, Director Fitzgibbons, and thank you again, Holly. Thank you. Okay, we're moving on now in our agenda. The next thing on our agenda is council committees. Do we have council committee reports?
Yes, we have a Finance Committee report. We had our Finance Committee meeting on Thursday, the 28th of February. Lindsay gave us an update on the audit report, and Lindsay jumped through a lot of hurdles, and she did an excellent job in getting us through the audit with the state, her and her department. Thank you, Lindsay, for that. She then gave us a snapshot update, and looks like the city's doing well in finances. She gave us an update on the earnings report, and the 5 or 5.25% we're earning is doing really well for compared to what we were for 2 or 3 years ago. So things look good. The committee did ask if there's any contracts that we should be looking at, and nothing that came up right away. We'll be looking into those in the future. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Other council committees, Economic Community Development Committee, no? Okay. The Salary and Benefits Committee exchanged a series of emails with the city clerk where the city clerk is currently looking at some changes to our vacation and leave policy. So that's ongoing right now, not finalized yet. Okay, moving on to regional committees. Oh, please, I'm sorry, excuse me, let's back up. Yes, Councilmember Tallman, go ahead.
Okay, so this is regarding the Ad hoc Public Safety Committee. The plan was to create a committee of 5 to 7 residents and business owners to come up with some ideas to present to the council, collaborating with the community, the police department, city leadership, and to provide ideas on how we can improve public safety on all levels. Mayor Clark and I met with a number of excellent candidates, and I'm happy to announce that we have selected at this point 5 highly motivated, committed candidates, and we're waiting for one final answer from one candidate. We have, at this point, we have 2 business owners, 2 people that are professionals in security, an HOA president, and someone with a high level of waste management background. Our first meeting will be on Monday, the 8th, at 4 p.m. right here in City Hall. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Tallman. And I will add that I will announce that I will be sending those names for publication soon so that everybody knows who they are as soon as we have the last answer. Moving on to regional committees. Councilmember Charbonneau, go ahead.
Thank you. Mental Illness and Drug Dependency Advisory Committee met. They're going to be combining, we went over the financial plan for 2023, and they're going to be doing what I think is actually a very savvy move to combine some of the unutilized funds from the mid-grant, from different, pool for nonprofits and such to apply to with the Crisis Care Centers levy funding that was on the ballot last year, I believe, to work on rapid response for mental health. It's called the Mobile Rapid Response Crisis Team, MRRCT. I voted in favor of that. I think it's a great use of resources that were otherwise going sort of unused. So that is all.
Thank you, Councilmember Charbonneau. Anybody else for regional committees? Okay, seeing none. Moving on, we have no commission reports tonight, and next up is the city manager report. City manager?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of items. We just recently received the community survey report from earlier in the year. And we just wanted to make sure that was on the council's radar. Previous years, we've had them come and provide a presentation to the council. We just want to see if we should be planning and preparing for that, if we want them to come. I think in previous years, they've been on Zoom, I believe. And so just want to put that on the council's radar. Is that something that you want to do similarly, or is the report as it was sent out fine? We'll definitely publish that and put it on the city's website. We just want to make sure we're communicating with ETC Institute if we need them to prepare a council report.
Do we have a consensus of yes or no? Do we need to have the consultant to talk to us? I see a couple yeses. Go ahead and comment.
Thank you. I've in the past found it useful. They kind of break it down. It's a long document that we got, and they break it down well, in my opinion. In the past, it's just been helpful, especially for like new council members that haven't seen it before. I don't know. I find it helpful, but I'll go with consensus.
Councilmember Tallman?
So I've pretty much read the entire document, and there's a lot of great information on there. The only questions I would have from a consultant would be how accurate the information is. Of course, they describe that at the very front. They describe how big the sample size is and everything, and I think that's all clear. It reads very well, and it's very, I think it's good information that the public should have access to. Most of the public's probably not going to read it, but I think it would be a good idea for us to summarize that at the town hall meeting, at least most of the key components. In my opinion, especially regarding public safety, because there's a lot of opportunity there. I don't know if we have to have someone come in and actually go through the details with us, because it reads pretty easy. There's just a lot of information. And I don't know how we would summarize that, but it would be nice to have it included during the town hall meeting.
Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, echoing Councilmember Steve's, if the consultant is going to charge us extra just to come and present, then I don't think so it's worth it, because the document is pretty detailed. If it's part of the package, then that's fine, but I don't feel it's worth paying extra just to go over that, because I remember like a few years back we did go over it, and it was pretty much, he was reading through the document, so yeah.
So I would say probably no. No on the receiving a briefing. Like, we can all take a look at it and ask questions if we have them.
Okay. The only other thing I had for tonight is Issaquah School District reached out wanting to know if the council would be up for a linkage meeting, so a joint meeting with the school board. And so I just wanted to, I don't necessarily need an answer tonight, I just wanted to put that on the council's radar. And if that's something that you're amenable to, we would want to figure out what kind of dates might work and timeframes. They seemed, at least with their initial reach out, they suggested either a school board time or a time that the city council already meets. It seems like they'd be amenable to meeting on our time frame if we're up for that. So I'll get. I certainly love any feedback right now, but I'll put it back out and ask for council feedback.
This simply be a meet and group? What's the goal for, what would be the takeaways?
My understanding is that these used to happen in the past. They'd like to kind of reestablish that link with us. What they had mentioned in their email was we serve a lot of the same constituency, and so if there's things to collaborate or come together on, they would like to do that.
Okay, yeah, let us know what, some possible alternatives. Okay, anything else, city manager?
That's all I got.
Okay.
Oh,
Go ahead.
I feel bad that Holly left, but I did want to clarify on the income tax question. The income tax was one of the initiatives that was adopted by the legislature, so that won't be on the ballot.
The capital gains one's on the ballot.
Right.
Yeah.
You mean state income tax?
Right. So
It was
the
defeated,
initiative was that there will be no state income tax, and they adopted that.
but there could still be capital gains tax. Yeah.
So no is yes, or yes is no.
Okay, moving on to the consent agenda. Is there any desires to change, remove, or alter the consent agenda? Councilmember Sherlock, go ahead.
Thank you. I would like to move item 9.3 from the consent agenda to the general business.
Okay, the consent agenda, item 9.3 will become general business item 12.3. Any other alterations or changes desired to the consent agenda? Okay, please show the consent agenda approved as amended by removing item 9.3 to the general business. We have no public hearings tonight. We have no unfinished business. Now we are moving on to general business. Adoption of ordinance 2024-660, reducing the speed limit on 116th Avenue Southeast and May Creek Park Drive. Director Bronze.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. I do not have anything prepared to present to you. We just talked about it last meeting, but as this is an ordinance, it cannot be on the consent calendar.
Very
So
well.
I'll be happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, turn it over to you.
Okay. Any questions or discussions desired from Director Bronze? Okay, so do I have a motion? Deputy Mayor LaCourte.
I move to adopt ordinance 2024-660, reducing the speed limit on 116th Avenue Southeast and Southeast May Creek Park Drive as presented.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to adopt ordinance 2024-660, reducing the speed limit on 116th Avenue Southeast and Southeast May Creek Park Drive. It's been motioned by Deputy Mayor LaCourte and seconded by Councilmember Sherlock. Deputy Mayor, would you like to speak to your motion?
No, I think we have enough information.
Councilmember Sherlock?
We spoke about this at length last meeting, and I think it's a good way forward.
Okay. So, to repeat, we have a motion on the floor to adopt ordinance 2024-660, reducing the speed limit on 116th Avenue Southeast and Southeast May Creek Park Drive as presented. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the motion passes 7-0. Okay. Next up on our agenda, item 12.2, adoption of ordinance 2024-661, 2024 budget amendment number 1. Director Chambers, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. Before you is an ordinance to adopt the first budget amendment for the 2024 budget. I'm going to go over it kind of briefly. There's a lot of detail within the ordinance exhibits itself that hopefully you've had some time to look over. The highlights of this budget amendment are to most importantly bring forward our ending fund balances and reconcile our beginning fund balances for 2024 to where we ended 2023 at. And those details can be found in Exhibit B of the ordinance. And then the other primary reason for the budget amendment is to bring forward the other carry forward items that we had left over from 2023. So we had a number of them. Primarily, I know we talked about them a lot last year. We had a number of projects that either didn't happen or didn't get started until later in the year, so they've continued on into this year. And so we're carrying forward the essentially the remaining costs on the contracts that have been established and approved for those projects. There's a few that will have a little bit of additional expenditure that we expect for this year, both in transportation capital and parks capital. We have, or excuse me, at least in parks capital right now, we have grant revenue that we're carrying forward because it, again, was not reimbursed in 2023 due to the delay in the project starting. The swim fund also has a couple new grants that have been approved since, or that have been awarded since we adopted the 2024 budget. So those are included, along with a grant that was reimbursed fully in 2023, which we did not expect when we adopted the budget. So that item is being removed as part of this budget amendment. And then we do have a couple vehicles, again, that we tried to order last year. They were in the budget for 2023, but they did not have them in stock, so we weren't able to get them. We've since been able to place purchase orders for at least 2 of them, so they are expected to be delivered in 2024, so we're carrying forward those costs. Other than that, in the ordinance, you'll see that it has the adopted budget totals. And again, this is both the total of the revenue and beginning fund balance, as well as the expenditures and ending fund balance. We're considering that full amount when we're looking at the budget total. And then your second column in the ordinance is the change for each fund. And those changes are detailed in Exhibit A. So when you go through Exhibit A and look at all of those lines, both the revenue and the expenditure side, each side totals to what that change in the budget is. And then we have our new amended budget. So when we adopted the budget, it was $45,558,780. We have just over $2.6 million in amendments, which brings us to a new amended budget total of $48,175,753. So with that, I'll take any questions if anybody has questions on any of the details or comments on how the document's laid out.
Okay, questions for Director Chambers? Okay, seeing, Councilmember Charbonneau, go ahead.
I was going to make a motion.
Please go ahead.
I move adoption of ordinance 2024-661, amending ordinance 2023-658, the 2024 budget as presented.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember Charbonneau to adopt ordinance 2024-661, amending ordinance 2023-658, the 2024 budget as presented, and it's been seconded by Deputy Mayor Lacotia. Councilmember Charbonneau, do you have anything to add?
I do not.
Deputy Mayor, do you have anything to add? Okay, seeing no comments, we have adoption of ordinance 2024-661, amending ordinance 2023-658, the 2024 budget as presented. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Okay, give me a second to go back to that other item. Feel like my dog's scratching on the floor here. Okay, it was moved to remove item 9.3 by Councilmember Sherlock. Approval of resolution 2024-991 pandemic relief plan amendments. Councilmember Sherlock, please, what's on your mind?
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to pull this from consent because I think I made it clear in the last meeting that I did not support this this resolution. So I just wanted to be able to vote no.
Any other comments or questions about this particular agenda item? Okay, seeing none, do I have a motion on the floor? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
I move adoption of resolution 2024-991 pandemic relief funds implementation action plan amendments as presented.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to adopt resolution 2024-991 pandemic relief funds implementation action plan amendments as presented. Deputy Mayor, would you like to say anything?
I think we discussed a lot last time. This is the right thing to do. So, yeah.
Councilmember Griffin, do you have any comments?
No comment.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor to adopt Resolution 2024-991 Pandemic Relief Funds Implementation Action Plan Amendments as presented. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? No. Okay, motion passes 4-3. Council members Tallman, Deputy Mayor Laconia, Mayor Clark, and Councilmember Griffin in favor. Councilmember Charbonneau, Sherlock, and Burford opposed. Okay. Moving on to additional public comment. City Clerk, do we have anybody signed up? Thank you. Okay. Second public comment, a reminder that please come to the podium, state your name and neighborhood. You have 3 minutes to state your comment. A buzzer will sound when your time is up, and we ask you to conclude at that time. First person on here is Carol Simpson. Go ahead, Carol.
Hey there, Carol Simpson from Olympus, the Vineyards. You passed 2 ordinances tonight. I'm wondering how informed the public was that the speed limit's going to be changed on a major arterial in the community. Where was the public comment? Public comment's supposed to be taken on ordinances. There wasn't a sign-up sheet for public comment for ordinances. So the process of taking public comment on ordinances at the beginning of the meeting is failing. They went there. So I wasn't reminded because I didn't come with an agenda in my hand. Maybe the other people here didn't know. I was surprised that I was surprised other people are very surprised when they see the speed limit change on 116th, that they weren't informed, it wasn't a public process. I encourage you to have public forums. It doesn't matter if all 7 council members show up. You're encouraged as council to engage with your community, to have a public discussion with your community, to look at the people who are talking to you, Council Member Tallman, and to honor the people that come and want to speak about city issues and be a part of this city. It doesn't matter if it's 25 people that show up in a room and speak to you and have a conversation with you, 2 or 3 council members, or all 7 of you with 200 people. The idea is to come together and maybe engage with some new faces, not just my own all the time at council meetings, to get out there and see some new faces. I remember Councilmember Griffin spoke about how he got together in Councilmember Sherlock's home and met new people and got to know Councilmember Sherlock a little bit better. We're still coming out of COVID. We need this face-to-face communication. We need to be in touch with our fellow community members. We don't always agree. There's going to be 4-3 votes, and I totally get what Councilmember Griffin was saying about our manual, the manual you'll go by, and upholding the vote once it's taken. Yep, you go forward. And sometimes you're on the 4, and sometimes you're on the 3. And we all switch sides sometimes. And we see now there's a different group in town who are the 4. And yay, isn't that fun? So, but the city's going forward, and how are you going to make it better and engage with your community? This wasn't engagement tonight, passing 2 ordinances that the community didn't know about, that there was no sign-up sheet, there was no public comment. I encourage you to go back to your council rules and reconsider how do you engage your community in commenting on the most important thing you do, which is you're passing your city laws. The city laws is an ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Moving on, seeing no other public comment. Oh, go ahead, Mr. Troutman, come on up.
Thank you, Mayor. I didn't plan on talking, but, I'm sorry, Len Troutman. I'm a resident of Hazelwood for 39 years. I hadn't planned on talking, but Ms. Simpson, I don't understand her rationale. She said there was no hearing. Maybe there was no formal hearing for you passing the speed limit reduction on 116th, but it was in response to major public input and complaints about problems on these particular thoroughfares. You considered the public's, actually it was an outcry, and almost a demand. I mean, it was pitchforks and torches, in essence demanding that something be done. It was a big campaign issue this past fall, so I think you did a good job considering all the people's input, and I think you did a good job implementing what hopefully will be productive traffic calming measures. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, seeing no other public comment, moving on to the planning calendar. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Just upcoming items for the next couple of meetings. For April 16th, Waste Management will be here to present their annual report, and we'll have a CIP update. A couple of things on consent as far as bid awards for the 112th Avenue Southeast non-motorized improvements and the Southeast May Creek Park Drive non-motorized improvements, and then project acceptance for our curb ramp retrofit project. May 7th, we have the town hall. And then looking out to May 21st, we have tentatively scheduled a joint meeting with Planning Commission. Just that would be focused on the comp plan, just an opportunity to get back together, make sure that staff and SCJ have an opportunity to put information in front of you as a group, and an opportunity for the Planning Commission to touch base with the City Council as far as where we're at in the process and kind of the time frame moving between May 21st and December 31st and getting that done. And I'll take any questions.
Questions for the City Manager on the planning calendar? I just have one question that we didn't ask or discuss during the first part of the meeting, but 2 years ago we recorded the town hall, but last year we did not. So I'm not sure what the logistics are involved in it. Is it possible? What is? I know we didn't talk about it, but I know we did it once, but not twice. So I don't know actually why we didn't do it the second time.
My understanding, at least last year, was that the recording was not great. It was hard to hear, and so wasn't worth doing it again. I don't know how that was done the previous year at the golf course. It would be challenging to do it at Risen Middle School. They don't have capacity for it as far as something that they already have just there in the room. Anything we would record it with would be something manual that we brought in that may be difficult to hear.
Okay. Thought I'd ask. Yeah, I didn't imagine it would be easy, but you know, obviously we want to have most exposure as possible. But, okay. Other questions for the City Manager on the planning calendar? Okay. Seeing no other questions or comments, we are adjourned 8:27. Thank you.